BPG cars.
What's up, y'all? Today we're going to be doing the fourth installment on our engine build. We're going to be working on the BMW M20 engine. It's an inline 6-cylinder. This is a turbo. It's a customized turbo engine that I did in the past as well. It's custom painted with chrome, custom head gasket, custom parts, custom T3 T4 hybrid turbocharger with a customized turbo manifold. Okay, so hope you enjoy the video, and without further delay, let's get it on. Before we begin, let me get started by telling you a little history about the BMW M20 inline 6-cylinder engine. This engine started production in 1976 and continued production all the way till 1988. The displacement of this engine started out at 2 liters in 1976, and it grew in size all the way to 2.7 liters in 1988. The sizes of these engines are as follows: 2.0, then there was a 2.3, then they made it bigger into a 2.5, and finally, in its final form, the 2.7, which is the engine we're working on here. When I first pulled this engine, it was, of course, a very difficult process, but as you can see here, I have all the tools that I need to complete this job. With nobody to help me, of course, I had to do it all by hand, and I had to do it all by myself, which is fine. I do engines like this all the time, even big ones, all by myself. I don't really need any help because I've been doing this such a long time. As you can see here, this engine was in really bad shape. It had a lot of noise in the valve train. I think I had a couple of rocker arms that were bent in there, and plus it was running, very low on power, so it needed a complete rebuild. So I proceeded to blueprint this engine. Every single inch of it was taken care of, including rings, new rocker arms, new camshaft, new timing belt, new gaskets, honing, machine work, and everything else you can throw at it. This engine I've done complete from top to bottom. In the beginning of any engine rebuild or blueprinting, you have to make sure all the measurements are correct in every single component in the engine, so you make sure the engine will last a long time without any failure. As you can see here, the rod bearings look pretty good, and also the crankshaft journals look pretty good. And you have to make sure there's a really clean and mirror-like finish every time you pull the caps off. So unless it's if it's worn out and if it's in bad shape, you'll know it right here from the bottom part of the crankshaft. And in this situation, it looks pretty good from here. So all it really needs is to clean it and then have it repolished, and it's ready to go. And when you see the connecting rod caps, you need to make sure that the notches at the bearing side are going into the notches of the bearing itself. You'll see it right here where my finger is pointing. It's going to be reverse on the opposite side. It's to ensure that the crankshaft bearings don't spin around the crankshaft itself and destroy the crankshaft. That's what that's for. And you have to make sure that the bolts on the connecting rods are replaced, because they do stretch and they're like one use only. Just for safety's sake, it's a good idea to replace them with brand new bolts. And in this application, we'll be using ARP bolts. ARP, Aeromotive, actually what they're called. They're Aeromotive or aerospace quality bolts. High tensile steel exceeding aviation specs. That's what we'll be using on this application. And you have to make sure that all of the connecting rod caps are lubricated with Moly Lube before installation, as you can see here where I'm pointing with my finger. The best method for finding out if your valves are leaking is to use the fuel test. What you do is you prop the head up on a flat surface and make sure the head is completely flat. Then you pour diesel oil or any kind of white gas or any substance like that in the combustion chamber, as you can see here. Okay? After that, you let it sit for 24 hours. You come back in the morning and you make sure all the cylinders are filled equally. You come back in the morning and you will notice that one or more, or maybe none, have diesel fuel left in it. The ones that have no diesel fuel in it has the leak. That's where the leak is. The ones that have only some of it left over has a small leak. The ones that have only, or the ones that are completely full, have no leak whatsoever. And that's how you determine which ones are leaky. Now, after that, the process of fixing the leak is you take the valves out, you have them lapped, meaning you use a lapping compound right there at the face of the valve, near the very top, where it's round. And then you sit here and you lap it back and forth with a lapping machine, or you can use a handheld one made of wood and a suction cup. The moment you see a white fine line on the valve face, then you will know that the valve is sealed. If you don't see this white fine line, that means the valve is bent. So it's best, for the cheap way that I use, my method is I take it to the machine shop and they will actually physically unbend the valve. It's not recommended, but if you're doing engines on a budget like I always do, I mean, who wants to spend a fortune on engine build, right? They're already expensive. And then your machine shop, if it's a good one and reputable, should be able to get it straight. He's going to be using a run out gauge or a dial gauge, and that will determine if the valve is completely straight. A good machine shop should be able to get a valve straight, no problem. It's much cheaper than buying new valves, especially if you're living somewhere like in the middle of Asia or some other foreign country. You know, saving a lot of time and money is a good thing. When you're working on the head, or especially this head, you will notice that the valves, or actually the roller rocker arms on this head, have ceased. They're no longer rolling. So what happened was it destroyed the cam. So now I have to replace both the camshaft and the roller rocker arms on this engine. Before you remove the crankshaft, first you have to remove the head. For the proper procedure, first remove the valve cover and also the gasket. Below that, you're going to see large head bolts. The proper procedure for removing the head is to start in the middle, work your way outwards, do it in a crisscross pattern. When you reinstall the head, you're going to do it in an opposite direction, but also starting in the middle. And before you even remove the head, you need to remove the timing belt. For this particular engine, the timing is set, as you can see, the cam cover has 3 marks on it. One mark is horizontal, where the cam gear is. As you can see at the top, it's facing almost on the 2 o'clock position. Make sure your distributor rotor is facing downwards at the 5 o'clock position from what you see here. And in the crankshaft area, you can see the green arrow pointing to the dot where I've listed it. It's pointing in the 1 o'clock position. And also the balance shaft, you will see it's pointing in the 11 o'clock position. Make sure all these timing marks are marked with yellow or some other bright marker before you even remove the timing belt. This will set your timing perfectly when you reinstall the camshaft and reinstall the crankshaft. Also, when it comes time to working on the head, you need to make sure that all the valves have been lapped before installation. Make sure all the pistons are clean of carbon. As you can see here, this is carbon, and you have to remove all of that. And then when you remove the pistons, go to the cylinders and make sure all cylinders are honed with a bottle brush hone at a 38-degree cross-hatch pattern. After that, installation of the camshaft and rocker arms is next. At this stage, after I pulled the roller rocker arms off, they were all frozen and the rollers would not turn, so I had to replace them with brand new ones, and the new ones were very expensive. Also, after that, cleaning of the rocker arms did not help matters any because it could not be saved. And after I got the new camshaft, before installing the new camshaft, you need to put camshaft lubrication on there. As you can see here, I'm using lithium type lubrication for the camshaft. They need to be installed on all the camshaft journals and also on the cam lobes, and also on the roller rocker arm, the rollers, and the fulcrum. After installation is complete, as you can see here, the rocker arms are looking pretty darn good. Make sure the shafts are in line after you put them through the rocker arms. It's a very tight fit, so you might have to use a wooden mallet to hammer the shaft all the way through to the other side. This job is best set for a machine shop, or it's best equipped for a machine shop that's equipped to work on this type of work. As for me, I chose to do it myself. Before installation of the head, you need to put RTV silicone on all the water jacket openings, as you can see here. It prevents the water from seeping out of the head gasket under full boost, because everything that's boosted is going to warp your head. And from here, you can see all the pistons have been cleaned and replaced with new ones, or semi-new ones should I say, and all the cylinders have been honed at 38-degree crosshatch, as you can see here. After completion of all the RTV around all the water jackets, the heads are ready to be installed. Make sure that the head also gets a coating of it on the opposite side. Not at the same time. You have a choice of putting the RTV on the head or on the block. I chose the block. This one was a mistake, so I had to take this off of the head before I installed it. But you have your choice. Don't put on both sides of this, head and block. It's not going to work. It's going to be too much RTV, as you can see here. Before I put the engine together, I made sure all the turbo components were available and accounted for, including the boost reference fuel pressure regulator, as you see here, the HKS super sequential blow-off valve, the intercooler, the charge pipes, the boost controller, and also the turbo wastegate for the exhaust. As you can see, this engine is finished in brilliant blue chrome plate. It's a customized chrome. It's very expensive, but the results, as you can see, speak for themselves. And the valve covers, intake manifold, and a couple of the associated other engine parts were chromed in blue to give it a matching color to the car, which was also painted in blue. After the engine was completed and installed, as you can see, I have a mock-up right here, and to see how well it would fit in the car, and it would be ready to install. The turbo, which is a T3 T4 hybrid, or basically a T04E Garrett Air Research turbo, is mounted to its turbo manifold, which is also custom made. It is an equal length unit, meaning the pipes coming out of the head are equal length to every single pipe on the head. All 6 pipes are equal lengths from end to end. And mock-ups are here in black and white, as you can see, are actually in full color. The engine, after mocked up, looks beautiful and it's ready to be installed in the car. After installing the engine of the car into the car, I checked all the wiring and everything and all the components to make sure everything was good. You have to double check the timing belt, make sure everything is correct with the timing. You have to check all of the electrical systems, make sure everything is fine. Wire it up correctly, make sure the fuel injection is wired up properly or hooked up properly. Make sure you have a brand new battery before you start any of this stuff or start doing anything. And once everything is installed, as you can see, it looks really good under the engine bay. And it's a sight to behold. It's like jewelry, in my opinion. So, in the next video, we're going to be ready to start the car. Before doing any kind of starting on the car, I rechecked all the torque specs in the head and also the associated hardware that's connected to the engine outside and on top. Had to make sure everything was correct. All the torque specs were met. No loose bolts, no missing parts, and nothing out of the ordinary after I was doing all the torquing, as you can see, one by one. You start from the middle of the head and you work your way out. And you do it in a crisscross pattern, especially for this engine because it's got an aluminum head. It will warp if you torque it the wrong way or you torque it out of sequence. When I got to the intake side, I had to make sure all the small bolts in the intake were torqued correctly and installed correctly and no missing parts. Everything is going to be mounted to this intake, including fuel injectors, wiring, the fuel rail, fuel pressure regulator, which is boost referenced, and all other hardware and wiring that goes to this engine is mounted under, on top, or beside of this intake manifold. If this isn't done correctly or if it's done wrong, then I'm going to have to take this intake off again, and it seems like a zillion bolts holding it together, so it's a real pain in the ass. You know what I'm saying? So you have to make sure everything is double checked here and everything is connected properly before you proceed to the next video. Finishing up all of the bolts and necessary hardware near the intake manifold area and also on the side of the engine. It's time to install the oil and everything else that goes with this before we start the engine. In the next video, we're going to finally see this engine run for the first time in maybe many years, I would say.
Let's keep painting, baby.
It's okay. It's the gray primer or white?
Oh shit!
Oh shit. Take that out of here.
Iya.
Bisa dulu, bos. Ready?
Yeah.
And yes, finally, got this thing running and it runs great. The M20 engine in its final glory. Beautiful, looks like jewelry, and runs really good too as well. I'm so happy about this build. Well, I hope you liked that video, and if you like the videos that I do and the things that I do on this channel and you want to see more, just like, share, and subscribe, and smash that notification bell so you can get notified of uploaded videos as soon as I upload. Okay, so you all have a Merry Christmas.